10, 9, 8. Go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, I'm going to be finishing the fins on the little Hi Flier, and what I'm going to use is this stuff here, which is sanding sealer. This is lacquer stuff, so it's really nasty smelling, so you want to definitely open a window when you do this, and wear a respirator, which is a good idea. I have other stuff. Oh, where to go? This stuff here, which is water-based, works pretty good on filling, but it warps the fins, so you have to put them under a book after they're starting to dry. So that's one of the other options, but I like the stuff better, but it's really nasty. So anyways, what we'll do is we're going to get a foam brush and we're going to brush the stuff on. And it's called sanding sealer because you actually sand between coats. Once it's dry, you do a light sanding, and that polishes it out and accepts the next coat much smoother. And do that about 3 times. And that usually seals the pores of the wood enough to paint it and have it look good, and it strengthens them as well. Okay, so now I'm going to just brush these with a little bit of the sanding sealer. Start from this side first. Make sure they're nice and smooth and blown free of all the dust. And we're just going to try to keep it off the root edge where you're going to actually glue it to the rocket. Doesn't really hurt it, but because you can sand it off later, but it's better to avoid it than sanding it later. Okay, now the first coat of this you put on soaks up really easy because it's on dry balsa, and the next coats won't be as absorbent. So I'm going to go ahead and finish those and let them dry, flip them over, do the other side, let that dry, and then I'll be ready to sand. Okay, so I've got the fins covered with the first coat of sanding sealer, and you can hear they're a little rough because that sanding sealer is I don't know why, but it dries really rough. So now instead of sanding it, which on small fins will damage the fin if you sand too hard, I'm actually going to use steel wool. This is a 4/0 steel wool. It works a lot better, and it basically polishes it out. And so we'll just rub that on the end here, let the steel wool do the cutting, and this will put out a lot of little fibers that you don't want to breathe in, so make sure you use a respirator or mask when you're doing this. And when you're done, don't blow the pieces away, try to wipe them up, that way they don't go airborne. But I'll just polish this layer best I can. And now you can hear it's much smoother. That undone, done. So anyways, I will finish that on all the fins, and then I will do another coat, sand, and another coat, sand, basically 3 coats, and we're done with the fins. Okay, I'm ready to put the fins on my little Hi Flier, and for this, I'm just going to take one of them, now that I got the 3 coats of sanding sealer on it, they're nice and smooth, polish them out with the steel wool. I'm going to take the fin and I'm going to put a light line of glue on it. And then I'm going to just use my finger to smooth it into the pores of the wood. Clean up the sides here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is this first layer, I'm just going to push it into the pores and then let it tack up a little bit, and then we'll put another coat on and have it ready to actually install on the rocket itself. And I've got the fin units marked out. I've got this little fin guide here, which is actually a little big for it, but it still will tape on there and hold the fin straight up. So it doesn't take this long, the glue long to tack up. So it looks like we're about ready for it. So We'll put a little bit on there for the final gluing. Clean up the excess here. And then we want to just smooth it out, but we don't want to get rid of all of it, pushing it into the pores. So now it's ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the fin line, or one of the fin lines, and we're going to actually set it on the back, and then let me get a tighter shot here for you. Okay. So we're going to actually take the fin line, and we're going to mark, or we're going to set the rear of the fin on the back, and then rock it forward to line up. And then we're going to move it a little bit forward because we want it to straddle this ring here. Okay. Make sure it's on there good, and we're going to give it a little squeeze. And then what I'm going to do is put the fin guide on here. Actually, before I do that, let me take a little Q-tip swab and get rid of that extra glue there. A little water. So okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put this tube in here, and we're going to slide this over until it joins up there, and that'll give us a little bit of a straight up and down. That way it doesn't flop over from one side to the other. And then I'm going to roll this tape over on the bottom. Okay, so that's going to sit there straight, and we'll let that dry, and then we'll do the other fins. Okay, we're ready to put some reinforcing fillets of epoxy on this little guy. And so I'm just going to take my half-an-hour epoxy. I'm going to take a toothpick, and I'm just going to lay it in there and have it go all the way down the fillet here, with a little intersection between the two. And I think I'm going to leave that little bridge there, that hole there that was made for that band, the engine motor band. And I'm going to take my Q-tips and some 91% isopropyl alcohol, and I'm just going to smooth this out. And then that pushes it into the crevice there, and then I'm going to take another one and I'm going to do some cleaning up here. And another one to clean up the top. Okay, so now we've got a nice little seam in there filled with the epoxy, which is going to strengthen this up quite a bit. So I'll do all the other fins, and then we're ready to put on the launch lug, and then maybe the streamer, and we'll be done. Okay, I'm ready to go to the next step on these fins. I've got them all glued in, and I've got them reinforced with the epoxy, the 30-min epoxy, which I smoothed out all the excess and just got it in the crevice there. So that's making them really super strong. But I thought I'd try my technique of making a fillet and make that really smooth using this dotting tool. And what this is just a thing that you can get at Sally's Beauty for making dots, using it, dipping it in paint, putting dots down on fingernails. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to smooth the putty out that I'm going to put in there, and that way it's going to make a perfectly half-round circle or concave fillet to go across here. So what I'm going to use, my favorite is automotive spot putty, and this stuff is the stuff that is not the stuff you mix with the hardener. This is the glazing putty, and it'll dry on its own, and it dries pretty darn quick, so you got to be kind of careful with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this putty, dish a little bit of it out, and what I'm going to do is, just using the tip of the toothpick, I'm just going to put some in that crevice there and just kind of push it into the crevice like so. And I'm going to go all the way down the side of it here, making sure I get plenty of it here. Now this dries so quick that sometimes you can't do the whole fin area. You have to do it in sections, which is okay because it covers itself just as quick. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this thinner, and this is Tester's Model Master thinner for metallizer. You can use lacquer thinner for this as well. I'm going to dip the ball in there and smooth this out. Slow, even strokes. Okay, dip it again. Just make sure it's getting on the right areas. That way it makes a smooth fillet. And if it starts to tear, just use some more thinner. Just don't let it get too rough. Okay, and I'm just going to use a little more. I'm going to finish the back side of this. And you don't need much because it does push it around and push it into those corners, but there we go. Dip that in there, and then you do want to press evenly on it. You don't want to put a line in the fin or the body, but you just want to make it so it touches both sides, and it'll make, as you can see, it'll make an actual trough here where it's going to basically taper the putty to nothing. And then the stuff that's extra there, I'm just going to scrape off with a knife. Just got to be careful not to get in the part I want to keep. And this will make the sanding a little bit easier, a little less time consuming, a little less mess. You can see it's already starting to dry. We'll just scrape it off, and then scrape it off the fin, and it comes off the fin pretty easy if you put sanding sealer on it. If you haven't, this stuff will absorb into the wood, and you're going to have to sand it out. Okay, so now there is a fillet that is perfectly smooth. Once it dries, I'm going to sand it out with some sandpaper, and should have a rocket almost done. Okay. I've got the putty on the fins of this Hi Flier rocket, and I've sanded one side. I've taken some 400 grit sandpaper, and I'm just rolling it over to make kind of a loop so it gets in that crevice. And I just start with the 400 and give it a nice sand. And as you can see, it actually gets down to that perfect line of putty. And we'll just smooth that out, and it'll look like that side there when we're all done, and then we'll prime it, paint it. Just got to put the recovery system in this rocket and the launch lug, and then we'll be done. Okay, I'm ready to put the launch lug on, and it says to mark 2 1/8 down the launch lug line. So I'll grab my pencil, and I think it was 2 1/8. Let's look here. Yeah, 2 1/8. So we'll take our pencil and mark 2. There's 2 1/4. There's 2 1/8. Just right there. Okay. Now I'm going to put this on with a little bit of epoxy just to make it stronger. So it holds a little better, because I hate when the launch lugs come off. It's a real pain in the neck when you're out trying to fly and then you have nothing to launch it with. So it's the one item that keep you from launching. Okay, so we will mix this up. Now epoxy, like I said, you want to get it really mixed really well. Okay. Now what I'm going to do also to make it stick a little better is I'm going to roughen up where the launch lug goes. So we're just going to take my sanding stick. We're going to sand down the length of the lug. Okay, that should make it stick a little better. I'm going to run the launch lug through the epoxy, getting a nice even coat on one side and getting it ready to install. So we're going to put it on that line, making sure it's nice and straight. Okay, I'll line it up visually and with that that line. Now with a single launch lug, there's a lot of forgiveness because they can be crooked and you can still put it on the launch rod. Dual ones are a little more unforgiving. So anyways, but I'll try to get it as straight as I can, and we'll let that dry. Okay, I'm ready to install the recovery system on the Hi Flier, which means cutting this little piece out here. It's full size, so just make a basic cut here, and then we'll refine it here. Get this out of the way. Now this uses a streamer, so it falls a little bit faster, so it's a lighter rocket. So we'll just cut this out along the lines here, making sure I don't get any extra cuts on it. If I accidentally cut part of it and make a little notch, then it can tear, so just got to be careful. Okay, so we've got that out. Now what we're going to do is take our recovery system bag and cut that open. And there's the streamer there. And normally I would replace this shock cord with a nylon shock cord, small one, but unfortunately they're hard to get right now. So what I'm going to do is just use the one that's there. So we will look at the instructions and see what which one of these we start with first. And it looks like we start with putting glue on number 2, the middle one, and then smooth that out. There we go. And then we'll put our cord right on there. Okay. And then we fold this first number 1 over here. If I can get a hold of it. Trying to keep it as straight as possible and make sure it flattens out really well using my fingernail. Okay, and then the next one we do is the number 3. Okay, we'll smooth that out as well. Use a toothpick for that one. Just make sure it's all good there, and we will roll over, fold over this onto here, making sure the shock cord stays straight. Okay. Okay. Again, getting it as tight as we can because we want this as flat as we can, so the parachute or the streamer won't get tied up on that. Okay. Now the next step is to actually put this in the rocket itself, and we're going to try to get this as deep as possible. Let's get rid of some of this glue here. Okay. So what we want to do is first I'm going to kind of curve this with my fingers so it'll get in the right place. So I'm going to smooth the back of this with some glue, and I want to have this fairly smooth. Okay. Now it says it should be at least an inch in there, so we're going to put it as far down as we can with my finger here. Now, this is a pretty small rocket here, so I'm going to try to use my pinky here. Okay. Okay. So I'll get in there with a Q-tip, smooth it out. Make sure it's laying flat and where I want it. And we'll let that dry. Okay. Pretty close to being finished with this. Thought I was finished before. This is the regular Hi Flier. And got everything ready to go. But what I'm going to do, that I planned to do, but I just decided to try to use the streamer since it's a small rocket. But what I would like to do is I bought this little tiny 6-inch parachute here, and we're going to put that on instead. It's going to make it drift a little bit longer, but I think it'll be a little bit better. Streamers, I mean, they always come down pretty hard, so trying to avoid that. So we're going to cut the streamer off that I tied on there, and it tied pretty good. Tear that off. Okay, so we'll stretch this out. Got that all ready to go. Okay, so we're going to cut the parachute open. What's nice is all the parachutes from Estes are pre-assembled. I would like to get a little 6-inch nylon, but I think that just wouldn't fit in that tube. That tube is so small, so we'll use a plastic one. So, okay, so we've got the parachute here. Bring all the lines out. Okay. So I'm just going to take the lines, and they're looped over like so. Put them on my fingers. Should be 3 of them. Okay. So now I've got the shroud lines there, and they are fairly the same length. So what we'll do is we will put that on here. Okay, get them even. Put them through the loop of the cone. Okay, making sure I keep hold of them. And we're going to take the parachute, put that through there, and slide the loop down onto the nose cone itself. Okay, so now we got a super mini parachute. I mean, it's pretty tiny. It's pretty neat though. So, little 6-inch parachute there. So, even neater if they made a 3-inch parachute, but oh well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take and pack this all in there. And for that, I'm going to take the shroud lines, and I'm going to just gently place them inside the parachute. Little triangle here, and I'm just going to roll over the parachute, fold it over like so, and then maybe a couple wraps of the cord, and then we're going to try to stuff this all back in the rocket itself, which is going to get kind of tight in there. There's not a lot of tube to utilize. So let's see if we can get in there. There we go. Okay, and we're going to take the parachute, and it fits in there pretty good, and it's still pretty loose. Push all that down in there. Okay. All right, get the nose cone in there. Okay. So we've got that parachute system ready to go. Let's check and see how it deploys. And it didn't deploy very good, so we'll have to wrap that a little bit tighter. I didn't blow through it as hard as I probably should have either, so let's try it one more time here. Let's see what we got. That's the only thing I don't like about these small rockets is everything gets packed in there so tight that a lot of times it doesn't deploy, and if you're using a small engine Luckily this actually uses a C-size engine, but if you're using a half A, they don't have a lot of explosive power. Okay, so again, we got it ready to go. There we go. Okay, so hopefully it'll give a good pop like that, and we are done with this rocket, ready for the paint shop. Thanks for watching. I hope everybody's doing okay, and keep on building. Be sure to visit our MouseWorks website for all kinds of neat tools, and be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you get notifications of all the rocket stuff I build and all the videos I put up. Thanks for watching.